Okay, let's take you to this now. Parliament says it will be hosting a press conference soon to share details of rebuilding the sections of the National Assembly that was destroyed in a fire a year ago. Government has been criticised for the slow response in repairing the damage to Parliament. We're now joined by the Speaker of the National Assembly, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula. But before we get in conversation with you, Ma, let's take a listen at what Nehawu has had to say.
We are very much concerned about the slow progress in the finalization of the report. In fact, it is our view that the report should have been finalized a long time ago. It's a pity that as we speak today, a year later, we don't have a report, a parliament report that will tell us exactly what happened. And if there is someone to blame, as some officials have been suspended, who are those people? And what action is going to be taken. So as we are sitting here, there is no progress really. There hasn't been anything that we can be proud of as Parliament to say this is what happened, these are the steps that we have taken in terms of the consequences, the consequence management against those people that are involved.
Newzroom Mapisa-Nqakula, the National Assembly Speaker, is listening in on that. A very good afternoon to you, and thank you very much for availing yourself this afternoon, ma'am. Your response?
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to the listeners. A Happy New Year. And a Happy New Year to the representative of Nehawu on the platform. Let me start by saying, I think the statement by Nehawu is an unfortunate statement. It is an unfortunate statement because, firstly, they are part of processes in Parliament. And if there was interest in understanding what it is that is being done by Parliament, they would have been given that briefing by Parliament. Firstly, the fire broke out on the 2nd of January this past year. We are now 3rd of January. And I think it would be incorrect anyone to suggest that between that time, today, and now, no work absolutely has happened in dealing with this matter, including rebuilding Parliament itself. Firstly, you had to do a proper assessment of what it is that exactly happened in Parliament. And that assessment was done. Of DPW was to invite a multidisciplinary team from Pretoria to come and do a very quick assessment, which then recommended that actually you needed more than that. And thereafter, a team from Kucha was contracted by DPW to do that work. That work went on for plus minus 7 months. Obviously, they had to go firstly, access the building, look at the extent of the damage of that building, whether in fact it is a building which we can easily restore, rebuild, or we would have to demolish the entire building in order for us to build a new Parliament. So there's been a lot of work done, and not only that, the team from Kucha, much as it was contracted by the Minister, the Department of Public Works, that team reported to both DPW and to Parliament. The issue which Mr. Tembe is referring to of people who were suspended, it is true that you have some people within Parliament who we have suspended. We have suspended because, firstly, as the investigation and assessment was being conducted by the team from Kucha, we equally had taken a decision at a meeting of the Joint Standing Committee on Financial Management of Parliament that Parliament itself independently should also identify why, for instance, it was so easy for the person to gain entrance into Parliament, who were on duty, who was supposed to have prevented all of that from happening, so that the fire did not spread to the extent in which it did. So we did give that instruction, and of course, unfortunately, somebody did not do their work, and of course, there has been consequent management, and that consequence management was that of suspension pending and proper disciplinary process. So that has happened. Now,
Ma'am, please I do beg your pardon. Please do allow me to join you. Essentially, you are accusing Nahau of being disingenuous. Seeing that we are here, their issue of contention as well is a report to be made public so that as South Africans, we know what is going on. You speak of work that has been done for some 7 months. At last check, please do correct me if I'm wrong, a report was released by the City of Cape Town on the 7th of January last year. And so while we appreciate that investigations are still ongoing, is there something that can be shared with the public to know where the process is?
Of course. Not only that, if I may remind you, the meeting of the Joint Standing Committee on Financial Management, which are convened literally almost every second week on a Friday. It's a public meeting where the media, in fact, we have numbers from the media which even dominate the meeting more than the members of parliament themselves. So the report itself, in fact, even the Minister of Public Works did come out after the first report came out, the preliminary report, and actually gave South Africans an idea of what is happening. So I do not want to say it is disingenuous of Nehau, but I do want to say that the leader of Nehau in Parliament is well informed. The fact that he is even aware of the fact that some people have been suspended as part of consequence management, it is because they are privy to that information from the Secretary of Parliament. The issue I am raising is the work of Parliament has continued despite the fact that there hasn't been a rebuilding or restoration of Parliament. Parliament is not about the building. Parliament is about the mandate of parliamentarians to conduct their work of passing legislation, processing legislation, of oversight over the executive. And that work has continued. Obviously, we are not all happy about the fact that that work is being done through a hybrid system. People would prefer that we have a physical sitting of all 400 members of Parliament. However, we are unable to do that for now because we do not have the facilities for us to have all 400 members sitting and engaging in those kinds of discussions. But we do have a hybrid system, and by the way, that hybrid system has proven very effectively, including in ensuring that there is accountability by members of the executive. Let me just cite this example. Members of the executive, for instance, answer questions to members of parliament, right? And this has happened through the hybrid system. They have availed themselves, those who are able to come to Cape Town, they have availed themselves and appeared before Parliament to answer questions. Now, to say everybody will be, none of us are satisfied about the fact that continue to operate in a hybrid forum. None of us. But it's a situation, the reality is beyond our control. And that is, whereas for 2 years we had to use a hybrid system to do our work as members of parliament, suddenly on the second we found ourselves in a situation where somebody somewhere simply decided to attack our institutions of democracy by burning down parliament. And therefore, indeed, there is absolutely no space from where we can function. But it is important as well to make the point that that work of Kucha has given us at least a figure of 2 billion for the total restoration of parliament. And as I'm talking right now, through the MTBPS, the Minister of Finance has allocated an amount of 180 million, which will come in handy for us to take a decision about how best to ensure that members can come into parliament in a physical forum, all 400 for an emergency, such as we're going to SONA now. During SONA, we will go back to the city of Cape Town in the same way that the MTBPS, we had to use the city of Cape Town. It could be that, for instance, the technical team led by the Secretary of Parliament may come back and say, let us use part of this 180 to buy ICT systems, which will require for the City Hall, whilst the whole building of Parliament or restoration of Parliament is being done. So it cannot be expected that in a year we would have rebuilt Parliament, we would have found money, because everything which we do, of course, it will be based on money, finances available, made available to us by National Treasury. I thought I needed to clarify that particular matter.
Fair enough. Thank you for the clarification. So, ma'am, on the channel last year as the fire gutted Parliament, we spoke to a number of engineers. One in particular indicated that the restoration project could well take some 5 years. And so this team from Kurha that is talking about 2 billion rand that will be needed to restore Parliament, and this 180 million rand that Treasury will make available. Please help us understand, what did the Kurha team say in terms of how long it would take to restore Parliament, and has Treasury dispersed this 180 million rand? And if so, how worried are you about monies being redirected elsewhere?
No, I am not worried about monies being redirected elsewhere. I'm happy that the Minister of Finance did make the announcements after, by the way, a long conversation and discussions with them, to say we need money, we will need something allocated in order for us to begin the process of restoration. Now, I'm not worried about the money. I don't want to be suspicious of people. I don't want to be presumptuous and say the money is likely to be directed elsewhere. The urgency of the matter is something which is appreciated by all of us in Parliament, starting from the executive authority to the last official in Parliament, by members of Parliament, because there is no space from where we can do our work. So the 180 is money which is allocated for us, which we will receive now, end of this financial year, which is money we will use for 2023, 2024 to assist in ensuring and in facilitating that members of Parliament can do their work in an environment which is habitable, but also that we will be able at least to utilize IT systems which will be made available through this allocation. The 2 billion is an amount, of course, an estimation which was given to us by the Kurha team. But I also do want to indicate to you that we have decided deliberately so that we will take various steps as we do this work. The first step, obviously, will be the restoration of the old assembly building. And the old assembly building, for instance, would cost us about plus minus 380 million just to restore the old assembly. And thereafter, there will be different phases. We can't just say tomorrow Parliament will be up and running. It is up and running. The mandate of Parliament, which is there in the Constitution, is that of, one, ensuring that we continue to pass legislation, that of course there's oversight over the executive. That work continues. The burning of Parliament has not prevented members of Parliament from exercising their constitutional mandate.
Fair enough.
Lastly, I should say to you that the 2 billion, it is estimated that 2 billion is the total amount which will be required to ensure that we have, one, a building called Parliament from which to work, but also the IT systems which we will require to be installed in that building. This, I want to say, as I step down, it's a very sad situation. And I think that it's not something, unfortunately, other people are seeing an opportunity to push other agendas beyond that of talking about restoration of parliament. Other people, for instance, are calling for us to take advantage of this whole situation to move to another province. Yes, maybe that's a we need to engage in. But now, no, it isn't, because whether you move to another province or not, we still have an obligation in terms of the SARA regulations. We will have to still rebuild parliament. Even if we were to leave and go elsewhere, we still have to rebuild parliament and take it back to where it was. So I'm just thinking that as politicians and as South Africans, we should have an appreciation of the fact that work continues to be done in parliament. Sessions of parliament, if you tune into that channel 408, you will see that members of parliament are hard at work. Members of parliament are also hard at work in their constituencies. Right now, we had an ad hoc committee led by Honorable Frolic and Honorable Nyambi, who have been hard at work with their teams, going around conducting oversight in areas which were affected by the floods.
Fair enough, ma'am. Please do allow me to join you, ma'am, for this purpose of time. Just maybe a closing thought. You will appreciate that 100 million rand is quite a healthy amount for just a 2023-2024 financial year for Parliament to conduct its business. 180 million rand. So that's for the 2023-2024 financial year, just for Parliament to conduct its business as restoration efforts are going on. Typically, how much would it cost? Let's say the building was functional, there was no fire. Just to appreciate maybe why people are anxious that the business of Parliament goes on, because you also mentioned another amount of 380 million rand to restore the old assembly. But for this closing thought, please help us understand the 180 million that will be allocated for the year for Parliament to do its work. How much would it have cost Parliament to do its work if everything was okay?
You know, I don't want to mislead you into believing that I have an answer to that. However, let me just cite an example. At the beginning of the year, after the fire, we had to convene SONA. The president summoned for a joint sitting to deliver his State of the Nation address, which is a very important day in the calendar of the Republic of South Africa. For that, we spent plus minus 4.8 million, right? Because the city hall, in the manner in which it is structured itself, it's a huge facility, yes. It takes the numbers and it even has a gallery. However, we then had to go out and hire IT systems which were going to be utilized for that purpose. In other words, if we continue to hire the ICT, the City of Cape Town on an ongoing basis, what it basically means is that actually we as Parliament, we may have to buy our own IT systems which we will install in the City of Cape Town. Failing which, we go on renting and spend the kind of money which we have been spending when we've had sessions at the City Hall. So I do not want to preempt a discussion, a debate which will happen between ourselves as the executive authority together with the Secretary of Parliament and his team. But I am aware that they are hard at work to prepare for a presentation which we are receiving in the next 2 weeks, which says this is how we propose the 180 million rand should be used. But I'll definitely be very uncomfortable if we were to spend that money not on investing for Parliament, but on renting, hiring, this, that, because all of those things ultimately, it means that that money will go down the drain. Whatever it is that we should utilize the 180 million for, I believe they will come with something concrete which will say, let's buy something that we are going to be investing in, something that will become property or asset of Parliament.
Fair enough. Has the Kucha team indicated how long it will take to restore Parliament? Do we have a time frame, maybe 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 6 years?
No. Everything that relates to the timings of how long it will take for us to build Parliament is merely an estimation. What the Kucha team has done is to do an extent of the damage, to assist us to actually gain access into Parliament, to have an understanding of the extent of the destruction of even the items which belong, precious items which belong to Parliament. So that's what they have done. And then to say, okay, for each phase which you take, phase one started with the old assembly, this is what it will cost you. Phase 2, this is what it will cost you. That is all they have done. For now, we have not talked about the period, the length of time it will take for us to restore Parliament. But it is clear to us that definitely it will not take us a year or two to have that building up and running.
Enkosi, ma'am.